So we are back, and the topic that we were going to do a couple of weeks ago, but I was having technical issues, was who would Tony Khan be replaced by when Shahid Khan realizes that his son is a lunatic?
Right, and what would it take for Shahid to fire Tony, essentially? And the reason I bring this up, and the reason that this was brought up, is because there have been a lot of changes in the pro wrestling executive landscape.
Wrestlers in the company are frustrated with the directionlessness of Tony Khan's booking.
But let's talk about why we wanted to do this, because obviously there were a lot of replacements in the first month of this year. Vince McMahon finally got ousted from his position in any sort of control in TKO. He is no longer in control of anything WWE.
The Rock was added to the TKO board of directors.
Yes. We had the Bushiroad situation
with Ogawa.
Yeah.
We had a couple of people from AEW that were ousted from the company too.
Yeah, in high positions. We had Scott D'Amore's departure from TNA,
which was the craziest one.
So with all these changes, we got to ask the question: when is this lunatic son of a billionaire going to be ousted? How is he going to be ousted?
Shahid is going to pull the plug. I think
Shahid has, at some point in time, Shahid has to pull the plug on this company, on this son who is just spending away.
Yep, he's spending all of this money and he's getting nothing for it. They lost money, and I'm sorry. It's like, well, why is it all money? Because it's a business.
Yeah.
A business has survived based on profits.
Right.
WWE is making money, so that's why they're putting more money into it.
Right.
But here we go. My first choice would be Sting to replace it, because here's the thing. Tony has a lot of direct day-to-day booking decisions regarding this company. And when you choose somebody, you don't need to just choose a former wrestler. You need to have a former wrestler that knows the business side of the business.
And someone who is, well, Sting would be a perfect choice because he's also actively involved in the locker room.
Yeah, he's actively involved in the locker room. He has respect for pretty much anybody in pro wrestling.
Yeah.
He has the connections that a lot of companies would absolutely adore working with Sting.
Yeah.
And also, he has that mind for the business. He's the one who reinvented himself from the Surfer Sting to the Crow Sting to the Joker Sting that people still like. He's the one who did this.
Right.
And people go to him for advice already. So Sting taking over the booking decisions of the company.
He wouldn't be in control of the company per se, but he would definitely be a head booker in my book.
Yes. My one is Scott D'Amore.
Yeah.
Obviously, he's the one who rebuilt TNA from essentially the ground up to where now it's one of the more popular things in wrestling.
Yeah.
I think this would be my first choice if I was...
because, of course, he's not with TNA, and TNA has said nothing about bringing him back, so he would be a great person to put in that position to, not only be an executive director, but also to be a head booker.
Exactly. Mark Henry was a choice that I had. Once again, the guy understands the business part of the business. He's been around it for a long time.
Yep. He's already employed with AEW. And I don't know what he's doing with AEW.
I don't know either. I think he's still doing this shit with Rampage, but that means nothing to me. Right. I want him to do something more than just be a glorified interview guy.
Right.
Henry is the one who helped Neville when he turned heel about his tactics. He's given advice to a lot of people that have been wildly successful. And once again, Henry has respect from everybody in the locker room.
Right.
So I think this would have been one of my first choices would be with Mark Henry.
Right.
Another one that I didn't think about up until I think today was Bryan Danielson.
Because he's also retiring this year.
He's retiring this year. So him being a booker and helping out with stories, I think would be a great benefit. And a lot of what we've already talked about is already here with Bryan.
Yep.
Respect around the world. He has the connections.
And he would play a decent on-screen manager as well, because we have already had experience with him being an on-screen manager.
Exactly. So I think he would be a great addition and replacement for Tony.
Yeah.
And I think this is my last one is Raven.
Okay.
A lot of people do not understand this guy's mind for the business.
Now, what is he doing right now?
He is doing really nothing.
Okay.
He is just kind of doing his own thing. He's not in wrestling, but he has the best mind for the business. He is the one who created the Raven persona.
Yeah.
He's the one who really helped out a lot of other characters to really get there. And he has booked wrestling before. Once again, you need to understand, it's not just a former wrestler. It has to be a former wrestler who understands the other side of the business. And Raven would be a great choice for that.
Yeah, and another couple of other examples I can think of off the top of my head. Obviously, with a lot of caveats that have to be put in place, but Jeff Jarrett and Chris Jericho both have good minds for the business.
I thought of Jeff Jarrett, and I'm actually...
But the problem is that both Jeff Jarrett and Chris Jericho are active members of the roster, and they have to be inactive. They cannot... The problem with Jeff Jarrett or Chris Jericho is that I fear that they would have too much
pull on putting them in a good spot. Look at Ultimo Guerrero as an example.
Right. Or look at Jeff Jarrett and TNA as an example. Or look at the Elite in the early days of AEW.
Well, I mean, right now I think they're leaning into it more as a gimmick, which I love, by the way. But
there was some sort of favoritism in there because it was AEW's All Elite Wrestling. It was formed because of the Elite
and Kenny Omega and Cody Rhodes. Right. But Cody put himself in that mid card position on purpose because he did not want people to speculate that he was doing that.
And then going off to that second point, and we have to talk about what would it take for Shahid to pull the plug. Do you think it's going to be another bad year before he says, I can't do this anymore? What do you think would be a catalyst for this?
The only thing that I can think of, well, there are two. If there was a big scandal relating to maybe some higher ups, the continuing ratings lows that's been happening. If Warner Brothers Discovery decide not to re-sign,
I think that would be a huge catalyst for Shahid to want to pull the plug.
Yeah, well, because then it's a dead property,
right?
So, and then once again, what you said about losing more money,
right?
From
this, again, that would have to be something that would be done next year, and seeing, okay, well, let's see if we can turn this thing around, because AEW is a private corporation, so their financials are hidden. We don't know what their financials were.
Well, we do know how much money they lost by trial and error.
But we don't know how much they lost the previous year.
If they lost any
before that.
I would say they probably were successful 2019, 2020, maybe even 2021, but I'm just not sure.
I don't know, because maybe they lost $60 million in 2021 and they lost 34 in 2022. Maybe there's an upward trajectory. We just don't know the numbers because we can only
speculate.
Right, because it's a private company. They don't have to release those. I think the one thing that might be I don't know if it's going to be a blow or if it's going to be a hindrance on Tony is probably going to be the media rights.
Yep.
But, at the end of the day, all we're saying is that there is a very clear lack of direction. And in order for AEW to be successful, they have to have that direction again. They have to either give more creative control over
I actually disagree with you on that. I think they got to put their fucking foot down and say, you are employed by me. You are going to be doing this because this is where we're fucking going. And if you have a problem with that, kick brakes.
So what I'm trying to say is that you need to delegate certain control to certain parties who maybe have a better mind for how this wrestling business works.
Yep.
Because obviously New Japan is not doing well. And if you want to emulate that model, that's fine, but it's just not going to work here in the States.
It kind of looks like AEW. I'm talking about working relationships. It looks like they're working with CMLL and with Pro Wrestling Noah now more because maybe they did see that writing on the wall because once again they're picking their talent,
right?
Too.
But AEW is obviously there's this vision that Tony has for AEW. And I think we've talked about it before, but it's not something that works in
America. It's not.
Right.
The attendance continues to fall, and we can see that based on numbers year over year.
And the morale of the talent has also declined.
Yep.
And we we can say, well, but they're still with the company, but they're on fixed contracts. And we have to see how many of these contracts actually renew after their contracts are up.
Exactly.
But anyways, when we come back, we got a match to watch.
Yay!